woke up early trying to get on this ferry to Anderson Island. I was supposed to leave at like 8:20, and then I got here in time and I wasn't running, so I've been waiting here for over an hour hoping to get on the ferry. So next one's at 9:30. Let's see if I get on this. But yeah, I've been just kind of taking photos around the dock area, which is basically waiting in line to get on here. So yeah, the light's getting better at least. It was snowing this morning, so that was weird, but it seems to hopefully be burning off. Let's see. So it's past 9:30 and I still haven't even boarded the ferry. The ferry actually never left for the 8:20, so I don't know if I'm repeating myself, but yeah. It's after 9:30 and we still haven't even boarded the ferry. We're just kind of waiting in line, so I don't know if this trip's gonna work out. I might have to switch plans here because I don't really feel like waiting in line all day.
So eventually I finally made it onto the ferry. The ferry had experienced several delays that morning because of maintenance. They had a couple different issues. That's why we got backlogged for several hours. When I said I was really thinking about doing something else or contemplating just doing a different kind of day, I really was kind of getting a little anxious and just bored of just waiting at the ferry terminal for that long. I tried to hold out by taking some photos with the Canon AE-1 I brought, and I was working with several different lenses for it. I had brought the 50mm 1.8, a standard kit lens for the Canon AE-1, a 35mm f3.5 that I had bought for it, as well as a 200mm f4 that had been given to me a couple years ago by a friend. As well, all these shots were shot on Kodak Ultramax 400. It's been a couple years since I shot Kodak's Ultramax. It wasn't that I wasn't a fan of Kodak Ultramax, it's more so that I was a fan of Kodak's Color Plus. For a long time I loved the classic look of Color Plus. I've heard it's just Kodacolor, it just rebranded. But for Ultramax, it was a nice change. It had good contrast and good coloring, and I was excited to shoot a 400 speed color ISO film that wasn't Portra and wasn't Superior. Again, after waiting though, we did finally get on the ferry and we started making our way over to Anderson Island. This ferry though was a little smaller one. It was kind of unique. It just has a little top perch and just two little side loading docks for cars. And it seems to be pretty busy. It runs about every hour or so. I think I took some of my favorite photos this trip right here on this ferry. There's something about taking photos on the interiors of ferries that I really like. There's something kind of classic nostalgic. Like some of these ferries have been updated for like 15 or 20 years and kind of shows, but I think it kind of brings like this essence of nostalgia that I really do kind of search for in my work. I tried to take my time walking around the ferry and just getting as many shots as I could. I could see Rainier poking out across the Puget Sound, but it was still covered by a little bit of cloud cover, so I was kind of holding out to see if I'd get any luck at seeing the mountain. Also, these last two photos I shot back to back. I had originally shot this photo, and then the gentleman came walking out of the ferry pretty quickly, and I quickly advanced the film and shot the next photo, just trying to get him into it. And I really like this photo. I'm glad I captured him in it. Sometimes I have a tendency to not shoot photos with people in it. I kind of like more lonely scenes, but I think this one has more storytelling, and it's got actually a little bit more narrative. Like, where's he going? Why is he moving in such a fast fashion? Like, it looks like he's moving with purpose and intention. Most likely he's just trying to get out of my shot because he doesn't want his photo taken, but hey, he gave me no complaints when I fired it off. After this though, the ferry was getting close to port, so I was basically ran back down to my car and got settled in. I made my way across the island to this trailhead that I knew of that I wanted to explore, but I first parked the car and kind of did a little bit of exploring around the parking lot. Most of the island's a 2-lane road, so you could kind of walk along the side and the edges, which I did for a little bit, but it seemed to be a little bit dangerous because people weren't really obeying the speed limit. But after a little bit of trekking, I made my way to the end of this bay here. And I took this last photo on the Ultramax. At this point though, the Ultramax was done, and I decided to load up some Portra 400 that I had. Looking back, I knew Portra 400 probably wasn't the best choice at this moment. I was going to be walking along a trail into some dense woods and just kind of like peeking out at a few places along the bay that like kind of circled around the trail. And I knew I was going to do some more interior wood shots, and I just don't think there was enough light or color that day just to really justify using Portra, but hey, you live and you learn. So on this trail in Anderson Island, it basically leads to the Jacobs Homestead, which is basically a homestead that was built there during the turn of the century. And when I say turn of the century, I mean going into 1900, not 2000. It was interesting back here. It was very odd and kind of calming, but I had a weird feeling of being watched the entire time I was at the homestead. Like, had a feeling like I was in someone's house and I wasn't supposed to be there. It was kind of weird. After taking a couple different shots of just basically the remnants of the chimney, I kind of worked my way back around the trail. So now we're getting to one of the main points I headed to Anderson Island. It's because of this boat. This boat was placed here in the 1980s. It's originally from Virginia, and it was basically a ferry crossing the Delaware River, and it kind of moved around a couple different times there, but it was retired in 1984. Once it was retired though, the current owner, I believe, bought it up and moved it over to Anderson Island. Like, he literally sailed through the Caribbean and through the Panama Canal and brought it all the way up here to Washington. His idea was basically to have a backup ferry for Anderson Island, like just in case anything happened. I think he was actually kind of looking out and trying to make sure that him and his family and his neighbors could get off the island. It seemed like his intentions were pretty solid. So the main reason that this didn't get used as a ferry though was there was issues with its age. Again, this boat was built in 1923 from what I can find out about it, and it already had a long full service over on the East Coast. So once he brought it back over to the West Coast, it needed a whole bunch of service and maintenance, and I think it was just designated too expensive to like rejuvenate. And then from what I read in a Seattle Times article, they kind of decided that the boat might be good for like a party vessel or private rental, something that people could like rent and use on the Puget Sound, whether it be like for parties or something like that. With all that being said though, this article that I found stating all this comes back from 1993. It is now 2023, so it's been about 30 years and it's still sitting there falling apart. Apparently the main reason that the boat was able to be left there though is apparently the owner of the land and the boat owns that part of the basically like tide area. So it's not technically open water. It's his land that the boat is docked on. Well, it's kind of run aground now. With all that information given to you, it was really kind of fun to check out the boat from a distance. I hear you can't really get close to it because it's all private property around it. The closest you can actually get to the boat is if you kayak out to it, and unfortunately I don't own one. So using a telephoto lens was the closest I was going to get to this boat. After seeing the boat and knowing that the day was still young, I decided to keep going on the trail. Once I made it all the way to the farthest edge, I found this little viewpoint that was able to get me views of Rainier. There was a lot of atmosphere in the air that day, so I didn't get a good clear shot of Rainier between clouds and marine layer, but still it was kind of cool to see the mountain, and I was really glad to have the 200mm on me. I stayed here for a little bit and just kind of enjoyed looking out and seeing the mountain and just kind of being alone on this little trail. It was a really easygoing, pleasant day. After a bit though, I decided it was best to hit the trail again. There's one more turnout on this trailhead before heading back to the car, and I decided to take that too, because again, I had all day. This was a little more interesting, I felt. I actually had a lot of fun here. Apparently at this part of the beach, it used to be a brickyard, so basically they were building bricks here, again, during the early 1900s. And a lot of the bricks that were made here were actually sent out across Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia, probably Portland, and probably all around the Puget Sound. So it was kind of cool to see all these leftover bricks just kind of scattered across this beach, knowing that they built some of the buildings I've probably been in. Yeah, so I explored this little beach with all these bricks left over and just kind of laying out on this coast. It's kind of peculiar to see like all these like perfect red bricks just embedded in the sand and the mud and just kind of strewn across. There's like even trees growing around like the brick patches and stuff like that. It was kind of funny. And even some parts of the trail actually had bricks laid down as almost like a pathway. It was kind of unique. It's definitely worth a visit, I think so, more than anything. Like I really enjoyed this little part of the area. I had a blast. At this point though, I ran back to the car and I kind of made my way down the main road that was close to the trail. Wanting to finish up the Portra, I decided this would be the best time to kind of do a depth of field test on the 200mm. I wanted to see how much separation I could get on it, especially being a f4 lens, and I found this little mailbox and I took 2 shots of it. I wasn't too impressed with the depth of field. I think I've been kind of spoiled by my Mamiya, like using the 180mm lens on the Mamiya RB67. Like that depth of field is incredible and like really has a lot of separation. And also you're using a larger format film. Like I bet if I shot 8x10, I'd be like over the moon. With the Portra finished, I moved on to Kodak Gold 200. There seemed to be a little more light moving into the sky, so I didn't think this was a bad idea. I kept kind of wandering around this main road. I found a couple different things I would really want to take some photos of and stuff like that, but unfortunately there's a lot of no trespassing signs in and around these properties. When I'm out, I really don't like to kind of like upset the locals or just upset people in general. So I try to be as respectful as I can. Sometimes people get upset with you for taking photos off the sidewalk and they literally can't be upset with you. It's public property, in my opinion. But if you're trespassing on someone's property or basically maybe taking pictures of like cars and license plates and stuff like that, it can seem suspicious. But if you're in a place that's naturally pretty, it's like kind of shouldn't be frowned upon that people want to also come and enjoy the scenes you see every day. That's how I kind of feel. Like I've had multiple conversations with people, one taking photos out in public, and some people are hostile and some people are just curious and other people are just unaware of what you're doing. Fortunately, on this trip, no one seemed to be bothered by me taking photos. So walking down the road, I did find an area that didn't have a keep out sign. It was kind of overgrown and it was kind of hidden off the side of the road, but there was a little pathway leading down to this abandoned boat launch. This boat launch seemed like it's seen better days, but it was very enticing to say the least to go in and check it out. I was a little bit nervous walking out on the boardwalk because I didn't know how secure or stable this whole thing was. It looked pretty run down, but I kind of took some gambles and checked it out inside and out. Again, I feel bad because I probably shouldn't have gone on that because I know it's private property, but there was no sign and it looked kind of neglected and forgotten about, so I kind of just took a gamble on this. That gamble being that someone could have come up and just told me to get the hell out. That being said though, no one seemed bothered by me being there, so I took a couple photos, but I was kind of looking over my shoulder for the entire time. I wish I didn't have that sense of feeling that I was doing something wrong and really kind of embraced being there and really kind of focused on taking more photos. But at this point, I was just kind of feeling lucky I was even able to get down here without anyone saying anything, so I didn't really want to test my luck. I'm really happy I did do it though, because some of these photos are some of my favorites I've taken in a while. I think there's just really good textures and colors and just basically storytelling. I love the framing of basically the boat launch on the interior ones. I think this was a lucky find on this trip and I'm really happy I took some photos of it. Feeling like I pressed my luck a little too long there, I kind of worked my way back to the car and decided to go check out another part of the island. At this point, I drove all the way over to the west side of the island just to kind of see if I can find something else there. Unfortunately, most of the island's pretty residential, or if not rural, so you're not really finding many interesting subjects. It was kind of fun to check out since I had never been here, but I wasn't really being pulled or gravitated towards anything particular. I wasn't really seeing anything else when I was driving around. Like I kind of probably looked shady. I was slowly cruising around looking for things to take photos of, but wasn't really finding anything. At the very end, I found this kind of road that led to a dead end and ended out on a beach that had a few views over to the Olympics, but other than that, that was it. After driving to the west end and finding nothing, I felt a little uninspired, so I decided to kind of maybe make my way back to the ferry and see if I can find anything else that way. Unfortunately, there wasn't really much there. Again, this place is pretty rural, and it's mostly people living out here trying to mind their own business, so I didn't really want to take pictures of people's like properties again and upset anyone. Again, like I'm visiting their homes kind of thing like that. But it looked like my day was finishing up, so I made my way over to the ferry terminal. At this point, I made it just in time. Basically, the ferry was already halfway across the water, so I just patiently waited to get on the ferry. Once on the ferry though, I just kind of took my time finishing up the roll. I took a couple different photos of just basically the surrounding area, the ferry ride, and just kind of like a couple different things here and there. So at this point, I'm going to talk about the Canon AE-1. This is actually one of two models of Canons I have. I have an AE-1 and an AE-1 program. The Canon AE-1 program was actually my first film camera ever because it was my father's camera, and we used that all throughout my childhood, taking photos on all our vacations and stuff like that. With that being said, I don't really use this camera because of that. I actually have too much sentimental value placed on the camera to actually even bring it out and take it anywhere, so I kind of just like let it sit because I'm too afraid of anything happening to it. Funny enough though, I think the Canon AE-1 that was given to me by a friend for free is actually in better condition than our old Canon AE-1 program, but still, there is something to this camera. It's a great camera, it works flawlessly, it feels good in your hands, but at a certain point though, I'm never drawn to picking up the Canon. I tend to use my Nikon F2 more now, if not my Olympus OM1, if not my OM4T. Again, the AE-1 is a great camera. It's got a great light meter. The Canon systems have great lenses, but for some reason, I'm just never drawn to picking it up, and I don't know why. I do think the F2 is a better camera because it is fully mechanical and shoots at 0.002 of a second, but that doesn't mean that the AE-1's a bad camera. The AE-1 shoots up to 1,000th of a second. It's got great low speeds on the shutter dial too. It is battery operated though, but these batteries seem to last quite a long time. At the end, I think it's just personal preference. I just think it's just not the tool for me when I go out and shoot. Like, I like the camera, I really do. I'm just not in love. And with that being said, sometimes I think about selling the AE-1 and the lenses. Like the 50mm 1.8 is a solid lens. It's a great kit lens. You can't go wrong with it. The 35mm f3.5 may be a little slow, but it's a tank of a lens and razor sharp in my opinion. As for the 200mm lens, I'm not too impressed, but then again, I think this is far from a mint lens that you can get. I think it's pretty tired. I think it might have been someone's like pride and joy for a long time and went a lot of places, so when I finally got it. I think there's a little bit too much dust in it or something like that. I'm just not too sure. I just wasn't thrilled by this lens. Another reason I think I don't like the 200mm lenses from these photos because I'm thinking that the atmospheric layer is causing the lens to be soft, and it's actually not the lens being soft, it's the atmosphere and the air softening the image. So I might have to hold my opinions on this lens till I get a really clear, dry day, see if it's actually a really good lens or see if my suspicions were correct. And at the end of the day, all I can say is that if you want a great workhorse of a camera with plenty of different lenses to suit your style of shooting and you don't mind it sounding like it has a cold, I think the AE-1 might be for you.